What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with my weekly recap, breakdown, review of the latest episode of Hulu's Nine Perfect Strangers. And today we'll be breaking down episode 4, which was titled Brave New World. And in this new episode, we learn some more backstory about these characters, but more particularly what haunts these characters, but also we get more of that mysterious character who keeps threatening Masha's life, but they take it to the next level in this 4th episode. And I'm so excited to break it all down for you all here in this spoiler review. Before we break it all down, do me a favor and check me out on all my other social media accounts. If you're new to the channel, well, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing to the channel, and while you all are at it, make sure you hit that notification bell. That way you can get the alert from when I drop new content. If you all enjoyed this spoiler discussion of episode 4, make sure to like and share this video. It helps out the channel a lot, but I also appreciate the support. And in those comments, let's talk all things episode 4. Let me know, number 1, out of these 4 episodes, what character are you rooting for the most? Who do you gravitate towards the most? Who do you relate to the most? But more importantly, what storyline, what subplot, what main plot are you most intrigued by? And of course, we got to talk about who is this mysterious character that is threatening Masha's life. Is it Delilah? Is it Yao? Is it Masha herself? Does she have some kind of split personality? Is it one of the visitors? Let's talk about thoughts, theories, pros and cons, and everything in between in the comments below. So first and foremost, I want to thank every single one of you all that engaged in the review that I did for episodes 1 through 3. It was so great reading those comments. It seems like a lot of people were in the same boat as me. The first 3 episodes were a little bit underwhelming. There were some people that loved the first 3 episodes, that loved the show more than the novels and everything in between. So again, thank you all for engaging in that video. Let's continue the conversation in the comments again. But nonetheless, going to this 4th episode and finishing it up just a couple minutes ago, I got to be honest with you all. I'm still not head over heels with this show. I still am kind of feeling like the story's a little bit lacking. This episode, I think, reveals the main mystery of the island, that they're just being drugged. I thought there was going to be a little bit more sinister nature to what was going on, so that's kind of blown, right? The characters still kind of feel generic. I personally am not like... I can't gravitate or grab or find myself attaching to a particular character. And I feel like there's just so many plots going on that really haven't add up to something that I care about. And I'll be honest with you all, I'm finding this show to be a little bit disappointing. But hey, I got my reasons and my explanations of why I think this episode was... It seemed to be the main thing I took away from this episode. I do have some positives to say. And I will say the one thing that I really kind of liked in this episode is it kind of shines this light on something that we do, as humans in society, right? We sometimes use our vices, whether that for some people be drugs, alcoholism, diving deep into work, burying themselves into work. And this episode shows you they're like, oh, we were on drugs. Oh, we don't want to be on drugs. But then they kind of think about I like this feeling. I like this being open and being honest and all this stuff. So it's just like that whole theme of just like sometimes we find these vices and use those vices to kind of wash away the pain or forget about the pain, but you still haven't forgotten it. It still hasn't went anywhere, right? It's just like you're running away from your demon. So I thought that was something that was kind of highlighted within this episode. But outside of that, this episode was a little bit lacking in the writing and the character development, but we'll get into it here in this breakdown. But again, let me know your thoughts on this 4th episode. Is it your favorite? Is it your least favorite? Let's talk about it in the comment section. So let's get into the recap here as the episode opens up with the group. As Heather asks Masha last week, are we being drugged? Masha admits, yes, you are being drugged. It's a mixture, it's a cocktail of mushrooms and psychedelics, and everyone in the group is like super upset. It's like, this is unethical. I didn't pay for this to be drugged without my acknowledgement. The only people that really didn't seem to care, and I guess because they weren't being drugged, was Ben and his wife Jessica, which I'm just going to say it now. I have no idea why they're in the show. Outside of them having some kind of crazy storyline in future episodes, I don't see it coming, but I literally think they are like wasted space. I don't know why they are on the show. Ben offers nothing to the show. And Jessica, I love Samara Weaving, but the acting, the false teeth, the look is just like, the character, please, the less of her, the better. But nonetheless, she wants to be on these drugs, which we'll talk about her and the Molly and everything a little bit later. But nonetheless, it's in this opening sequence that Masha, again, she admits that she's been giving them drugs, but she feels like this is a breakthrough. She feels like this will be a drug that would create so many doors for the medical field and be like this revolutionary thing that's going to, cure dementia and depression and this, that, and the other. So she's very gung-ho on this drug, right? But it's also, we learn that Lars is a journalist and he's just simply there to write the secrets of Tranquillum. So that's something that we kind of learn within that first opening sequence, which again, I'm just like, I guess that's the secret of the island, that they're just using drugs. I'm like, oh, that's a little bit disappointing. I was hoping that it was a little bit more darker, a little bit more sinister. They're chopping up, I don't know, baby goats and giving them to these people. But no, they're just drugging. I mean, again, don't get me wrong. They're drugging people against their will is very unethical and very, disturbing. But I was just thinking that was going to be a little bit something more interesting. I hope there's more to it than just that. But right now, it's looking like that's the main kind of mystery on the island. But neither here nor there. Let's talk about these characters, and particularly the lack of development in these characters. So, number one, I mentioned it last week that they're trying to explore this whole love triangle between Masha, Yao, and Delilah, and we get more confusion as we see that Yao and Masha are banging. Like, they're just straight up having sex in one of these opening sequences, and again, Yao's in a full-on relationship with Delilah, and I'm thinking this whole time, like, is it the drugs that she has these people on? Because we'll talk about Delilah having beef with Masha and not taking her drugs. And maybe when you get off these drugs, you start to realize her BS. So this love triangle, I think, is going to end in a tragic way. I think that Delilah might do something to Masha, and Masha might do something to Delilah. Let me know where you all are standing with this love triangle that we got between these three. But fast forward to the next morning. This is what I'm talking about. We're just kind of incomplete, uninteresting, uncompelling, dramaless moments. Everyone the night before is freaking out that they're on drugs, right? But then we fast forward to less than 24 hours later, everyone's waking up and everyone seems to be happy and okay that they're being drugged. Like, we see my man Napoleon, played by Michael Shannon, waking up and be like, you know what? I haven't felt this happy in 3 years. Drug us up. Let's get more of these drugs. Again, is it the drugs speaking? Are these people okay with now being drugged against their will? I don't know, because the show hasn't really explored that particular thread line. I mean, that's a storyline that should be explored, not an entire episode, but I mean, I wish there was more scenes involving like this unethical thing that Masha was in. But hey, like I said, it's just, they're fine. I kind of found that to be a little bit kind of underwhelming for me personally in regards to developing this issue at hand. But let's move on to, again, these characters here. As Carmel is having her one-on-one with Masha, and this is where we kind of learn more about some of these characters. Her in particular, we know that she is Regina Hall, big fan of hers, but she's a little bit wacky and has an attitude problem that we saw last week. But in this moment here, this is where we find out her kind of beef with younger, more attractive women than her, because her ex-husband cheated on her with a younger woman who he ended up marrying. The kids actually like this young lady, so it kind of explains why she wants to punch Jessica in the face, which, okay, sure, but nonetheless, she goes into, again, I talked about the backstory and literally scars that these characters have, and she shows one of her scars, and it was a bite mark from her ex-husband on her tit, and she says that she keeps it there and rubs it at night because it reminds her of the good times. And then end of the scene. I'm like, well, can we go back to that and explore this kind of psychic that she's in, this mindset? This woman is kind of crazy, kind of stalkerish, kind of weird, kind of, wacky out there. But again, they just fast forward and we don't even see Masha's kind of diving into that conversation. We just go on to the next character, which brings us to Lars and Zoe. Again, we bounce from here and then we bounce from here, but I just want to learn more about that subplot, but we go from one character to the next. Again, I feel like this show has just as many characters as I mentioned. This show reminds me a lot of The White Lotus, but this show just continues to bounce from one storyline to one character to this character without focusing on what's at hand. And I feel like the show should only focus on 3 to maybe 4 characters max, but we bounce from this character to this character. Again, we go from Lars and Zoe. They start to have a little bit of an important moment, which, by the way, I'm a big fan of Luke Evans, and I know came out as a gay man in Hollywood like a couple years ago, which good for him. He can finally be himself, and I think this might be his first. I've seen a lot of Luke Evans projects. I think this might be his first project that he's like openly, like, he's not openly because I think he's closeted in the show, but he's like the first time he's playing a gay man. I might be wrong, but nonetheless, he reveals, he has a boyfriend. He broke up with him. It seemed like it was a bad breakup. Zoe goes into her losing her brother, and then end of scene. I'm like, wait, what the heck? Can we go back to that and kind of dive deeper into this conversation? But no, we go from here to there, and then we bounce from another pair of characters, which brings us to Frances having her moment, having this venting session in front of the group here as she pretends that her husband, which again, Ben Falcone, oh my gosh, I am not a fan of him as an actor or as a director or anything, but she goes into her trauma and she starts to beat the dummy, and we see Carmel does the same thing, and Masha's like, kill it, like freaking out over this thing. But to me, it's just like, yo, the thing that really kind of is not sitting well with me with these characters, it just feels like I'm watching these great actors. I feel like they're just reading pages, reading words off a script. I don't feel like these characters feel like real fleshed out characters. I don't feel like the actors are really diving deep into these characters' trauma and their pain. I just don't feel the emotional. It's just me. I know some of you all might think that it's like groundbreaking acting, and to each his own, but I just don't feel like the actors are really diving deep into these characters, because so far we're hearing all the trauma, but I don't have to see everything in a bunch of flashbacks, but I don't feel like these actors are conveying the pain that they have suffered throughout, whatever their marriage or their past situations, where I just feel like it's kind of missing those emotional beats for me personally. And that was a perfect example of that. Like, I didn't feel her beating Ben Fanconi's face. I didn't feel like Carmel is like angered at her husband. I just didn't feel it for me personally. But nonetheless, we go into, again, this situation. This is a really random scene that I put down on my notes here. Jessica and Yao, when she's out in the forest, he's talking to the trees, and then she's like, oh, I want the drugs. Can I get the drugs now? And again, I love Samara Weaving, but her character is just so annoying. The look is just terrible. But we see that she gets her Molly, and then it just ends. But I feel like, is the show hinting at a romance between those two characters, because they both are going through like a weird relationship? Will they have like this affair? Let me know if you all think that's something that will happen in the future. But nonetheless, speaking of, again, just kind of randomness, we get our flashback of Tony. And Tony, so far, he's been the most reserved character in the show. He's really been not showing his cards, right? Besides him and Francis, he's revealing things to Francis every so often. But we finally find out that he killed someone. He literally killed someone accidentally, self-defense, if you want to call it that. But some guy at a bar was hackling him. He punched him hard, he hit his head, and he died, which is his kind of, goes into his story. He's an ex-football player. He's an ex-drug addict, all this stuff. But again, it's just like his career ended too soon. But I'm just thinking to myself, okay, that's interesting. All right, Francis, you have your trauma. You just had your venting session. Let's dive into these two characters, because I think the show is alluding to them having a relationship by the end of the show if they make it off this island. But we just cut that scene. Again, he's talking about all this stuff that he's been going through, and then we just leave it at hand. Again, I feel like the show is trying to just check in. Let's check in on this character. It's just like, guys, let's just focus on 3 to 4 characters, really fleshing them out, really have the conversation about their trauma. But no, we just got to go all around the island and check in on every single character, see what they're up to. And to me, that's a huge kind of flaw with this show so far. But I'm just like, I don't even care about what he's saying, because the show doesn't seem to care, because we're just cutting it off. It's just like there's probably so much left on the cutting room floor. But neither here nor there. As we wrap up this episode here, we see Masha and gives the instructions to up the dosage of the drugs they'll be given, and the only person that seems to be at odds with this is Delilah. She really doesn't think this is a good idea, and then they start to go into this, and you see that there's obviously tension between these two characters, because obviously Masha's sleeping with her boyfriend. I don't even know how long they've been dating, how long this has been a thing, but she's upset with this, and we find out that Delilah, she hasn't been taking her drugs, right? And I think that might be something to look forward to in the future when you're not on this psychedelics mushroom drug cocktail. You start to see the BS. You start to see the flaws in Masha's program, right? So I think that might speak to when characters kind of maybe let themselves off the drug, they can see through all the facade that's going on here. But nonetheless, we see Delilah, she claps back at Masha and says, if you don't start revealing the truths and you keep messing with my man, I'm going to reveal some of your secrets. So we'll see what Delilah has up her hand. I don't know if that's going to be leverage for her, or if Masha is going to end up, doing something to her. We'll see, because again, it seems like Masha has a little bit more darker demons than what she's showing. Even this episode opens up with her being shot, which again, I don't know where this show is going with that subplot, besides her being like money hungry and greedy and all that stuff. But either way, we end the episode with all of our guests, cheering and being happy in a good spot. But then we see Masha makes her way to her room, and all this stuff is broken on the floor, and we see this message on one of her paintings saying, "It's good to die," and it's the end of the episode. So again, it poses the question, who is this person that's texting her? Who is this person that's breaking her belongings? Who's leaving these messages? Again, my number one candidate, especially after this episode, is probably Delilah. But it's just like, why go to these lengths if you could just confront her, just have these conversations head on? So, that's someone that comes to mind. Obviously, it could be Yao. Yao seems too good to be true. He seems too nice. There seems like he has some demons up his sleeve. Of course, I still think there's something to be said about Masha. I mentioned how broken the accent was, which the accent wasn't that bad from Nicole Kidman in this episode. So it's making me think that this accent might be part of her act. Like, she might literally have like a split personality where she's like, she thinks she might have even been from Russia. Who knows? Again, we'll learn more about her, but maybe she has this split personality thing that she has going for her. Or it could be one of these islanders. It could be, I'm trying to think of like the least frightening character it could be Ben or it could be Zoe, because they seem to be the most like unharmful, kind of less interesting characters in the entire show. So it could be one of those characters. Who knows? It could be Heather, because it seems like those three characters are kind of like forgotten about for the 4 episodes thus far. It could be those other employees that we just haven't even learned about quite yet. But nonetheless, like I said, this episode, it's just so much going on, and I feel like there's interesting stories to develop and to really dive into, but I feel like the show just doesn't care. It just literally cuts scenes off, and it cuts off the development right at the heels of when it can be interesting just to go to another character, and then cuts off their character. So it feels like an incomplete show, in my personal opinion, an incomplete story development within these characters. So I'm 4 episodes in. I like David E. Kelley a lot. I'm a big fan of all these talented actors, so I'm going to come back and hope that episode 5 really gives me some of those moments where we can just focus on maybe 3 or 4 characters at max and really explore who those characters are versus, again, showing everyone all at once. So, again, let me know your pros, your cons, your thoughts, your theories in the comments below. Again, if you love the show, I'm glad you do. I don't hate the show. I just feel like it has so much potential, but it's just kind of the setup is really the hand that they're showing really hasn't intrigued me that quite yet. But hey, we got 3 episodes left. Who knows what the future holds of this show? But again, let me know your pros and your cons in the comments below. If you stuck around to this point in the video, I appreciate every single one of you all. Again, just a friendly reminder to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell. That way you don't miss any of my other future content. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Hope you're staying safe, and we'll see you in the next video.